What's up, you guys? Adam here with Anabolic Climbing, and today it's time for the long past due DHT deep dive. We're going to go into all of the major DHT derivatives, evaluate their impacts on collagen synthesis, do some table dressing with how the collagen curve tends to work as it relates to collagen hypertrophy and tendon hypertrophy. And then we're going to do some extrapolations based off of the data we have and try to intuit the data we don't. So if you guys like these incredibly nerdy deep dives into some bioidentical compounds and some designer steroids and their impacts on tendons and rock climbing, please hit that like, subscribe, and alert bell. This kind of content takes a while. So without further ado, let's hop into it. And let's talk about the collagen curve. So post-workout, the collagen synthesis is going to increase over the next 72 hours. And unlike fast-acting muscle proteins, tendons and ligaments have a slower, more sustained response and require more rest for adequate remodeling. So 0 to 3 hours, we're going to see the rate of collagen synthesis rise moderately above baseline as mechanical loading stimulates fibroblasts. At 24 hours post-workout, that is where the synthesis accelerates rapidly. Studies tracking muscle and tendon connective tissue demonstrate that synthesis rates are more than double compared to rest, peaking during this particular window. Keep this in mind. It's going to come back a little bit later. And in the 48 to 72 hours, it's going to gradually drop and return to baseline through the tissue repair and remodeling. It may elevate slightly depending on the intensity of the exercise. Why do I mention this out of the gate? So typically when we look at some of these additional studies going forward, it's entirely possible that they are just putting anabolics on top of cells or tendon cells without additional loading. So basically the extrapolation from this is if you elevate the overall collagen response from load or from exercise, then you add the additional collagen expression from the DHT derivatives on top of it, you can have a spiking or both increases in collagen and increases in remodeling to the tendon. And what you're going to see in a lot of these studies is really just the compound on its own spiking collagen for usually the first 24 hours. So let's talk about tendons and gear. So usually one of the things that you're going to hear from a lot of people trying to fearmonger around anabolics and tendons is the concept of collagen dysplasia, where elevated levels of collagen cause the tendons to have either helical structures versus horizontal structures, or basically the lattice structure or the scaffolding of the tendon looks bad. And this is something that we have proven in rats and in cows, but in humans we have not seen it. While yes, there is a hold on a second. So there is an increase in tendon injuries between anabolic and enhanced users versus their natural counterparts, but the overall fascicular matrix and the extracellular matrix of the tendon itself always looks fine when we do tendon biopsies. And we have done this across multiple studies and multiple different drugs. Tendons look fine on androgen. Tendons look fine on testosterone. Tendons even look fine on halotestin, anadrol, and winstrol, which baffles me, but in humans that seems to be the case. That is different from rats, which can exhibit various different forms of collagen dysplasia. But yeah, the tendons themselves had no significant changes in terms of structure, whether or not folks were on tendons or not. So now that we have some table dressing out of the way, let's tunnel focus a little bit on dihydrotestosterone. So dihydrotestosterone is a bioidentical hormone. It is in men, it is in women, and basically it has the unique ability to upregulate collagen synthesis and procollagen through the androgen receptor. This is somewhat unique, but not exclusive to DHT derivatives. Testosterone does not exhibit this behavior. 19 NOR derivatives can. So nandrolone can do this. Trenbolone can kind of do this. In the case of trenbolone, it is extrapolated that it tends to create some sort of tendon issues by upregulating type 3 collagen and lowering type 1. But again, I do not have any data of that in humans because it is not a human-approved compound. Some of that conversation came from my discussion with Kurt Havens last year. More on that later. So let's talk about the DHT derivatives. And basically, we're going to start discussing why some of them are more preferential toward the collagen synthesis that they yield versus the ones that don't. So we're going to have in non-alphabetical order, we have Anavar, Anadrol, Superdrol. All three of those are oral. I believe you can find injectable Anadrol and Superdrol. There's Masteron, otherwise known as drostanolone, Primobolan, and bioidentical dihydrotestosterone. So we're going to kick things off with Anavar. Also the first deep dive that I ever made on the channel. But the short answer is the data suggests that oxandrolone can stimulate production of osteoblasts and differentiation markers in osteoblastic cells through the androgen receptor. However, long-term treatment in mature cells, oxandrolone decreases collagen expression. Let's talk about that. They were usually doing this as it relates to burn victims. And what you would find is if you're just giving oxandrolone to healthy cells, you will spike collagen and then it will trough out and then not reach its previous high point. That is without stimulus. When you have stimulus, you're basically encouraging as we talked about on the first slide, an increase in collagen, a turnover within the collagen itself, and then tendon remodeling. I am extrapolating that, and also you can look at this in the clinical data, but I'm extrapolating that Anavar is going to increase collagen as long as there is a stimulus to basically catalyze it as well. That's one of the reasons why it seems to work so well for skin healing with burn victims and why they give it to children. It's not just in prevention of the muscle wasting. It can also leverage the increases in type 1 and type 3 procollagen in the fibroblasts as well. This is something that is somewhat unique to Anavar. And again, why it was deployed medically in people. Anadrol. So Anadrol, I have zero data on whether or not it has any impact on collagen synthesis through the AR. And chances are you're not going to run it long enough to be able to figure out if it's going to help your tendons or not. Going anecdotally off of the bro science, folks that run Anadrol for 4+ weeks, their tendons feel really hammered because of the increased load that they're taking from the upregulated strength that they get through it. But with the exception of outside of the dyslipidemia, it's also 17 alkylated, which means it's super toxic to the liver, and you can't really run Anadrol year round like you can with Anavar. So even if there are potential improvements in collagen synthesis, it doesn't matter because you're not able to leverage this compound long enough to get some of the tendon benefits that you could get from running other things for longer. Additionally, while it's not a substrate for aromatase regarding the estrogen receptor, it is still pretty estrogenic. So it is associated with elevated water retention in gyno. And this does intuitively tell me that it has some level of increases in collagen synthesis. But can you run it long enough for it to make a difference? I'm going to deposit no based off of the anecdotal data from bodybuilders, but it remains to be seen. Regardless, though, because of the increases in water retention, it would probably limit the overall benefits you could get from it as a rock climber, unless you're like doing some mountaineering stuff and trying to leverage it not for the collagen, but for the increases in red blood cell count. Superdrol. just like anadrol, but even more liver toxic and even worse on your lipids. I could not in good faith tell folks to run Superdrol for over a week, 2 weeks at the absolute max. So even if it was the holy grail as it relates to collagen synthesis, it's not tolerable or sustainable enough to run for extended periods for tendon adaptation. Let's talk about DHT for a second, because exogenous DHT is super, super interesting. And I have some theories about this that we're going to get into. So looking at the fascia, they basically gave exogenous DHT to female cells and male tendon cells. And what you saw in the male cells is no variations in the types of collagen expression. Even though it can elevate collagen expression through the androgen receptor, you didn't see it in men. But in women, at low doses, you saw an increase in type 1 collagen and a decrease in type 3 collagen, and a net pro-fibrotic effect. So the fibroblasts of the tendons were beneficial on low dose low dose DHT to females. It was negligible at higher doses. Let's talk about potentially why in a second. Let's go further into the data. So when we go through here, they basically cultured some fibroblasts into, I believe they put it in a plastic petri dish, and then studied the collagen synthesis secretion when it was exposed to DHT. And you were going to see that the collagen production release increased in the culture. And there was no androgen binding activity, hold on a second. In complete androgen resistance with no detectable androgen binding activity, DHT does not modify basal collagen synthesis. These results strongly suggest that the hormone response is mediated through the DHT receptor or is receptor-dependent. This could be used as a biological response of androgen action in patients with androgen resistance associated with the post-receptor effect. But you will see an increase higher than the base basal of collagen here. 2% versus 3%, 4% versus 7%, 2 to 3, 3 to 5. Just to spell it out specifically on what the difference was in collagen in females, at the lower female dose in concentration of 4 nanograms per milliliter, collagen 1 significantly increased from 2% to 4.8% in the cell area, whereas collagen type 3 decreased markedly from 10.4% to 3.3%, suggesting a shift toward more fibrotic extracellular matrices. Whoa, let's go back. These findings indicate that androgens can modulate fascia structure and may help explain greater hormone sensitivity observed in females whose collagen balance is more receptive to hormonal fluctuations and has relevant implications to understanding the sex differences in tissue mechanics, injury risk, and recovery. Why can we extrapolate this happening at low doses with women versus higher doses with women and with men? Well, there is estrogen receptors at the tendon fiber level. So let's talk a little bit about DHT's impact on estrogen, because not all DHT derivatives impact estrogen, but bioidentical DHT does. So let's go forward here, and we're going to circle back. So when observing the data surrounding the collagen expression in DHT, particularly as it relates to men, it seems discouraging, right? With that said, though, here's some context that I think should change the equation. The collagen expression in women, particularly in the type 1, was notable. My reasoning for this is women naturally have elevated levels of estrogen and estrogenic expression than men. DHT, in its bioidentical form, decreases estrogenic expression and in some cases acts as a kamikaze molecule, destroying the estrogen, not just expression. So you're not just reducing its ability to aromatize, you're actually killing the estrogen itself. This is similar to the way that boldenone actually destroys estrogen. It doesn't just limit its expression. With that additional context, as well as the fact that we couldn't see differences because there was no load applied to these cells, it seems like these findings are incomplete. If the mechanism of action was in place to increase the estrogenic expression, either via exogenous testosterone or estrogen for that matter, as well as being able to apply load, we might be able to see the androgen receptor increasing collagen expression that we won't find by just exposing it to DHT. It's also possible that bioidentical DHT doesn't alter collagen expression in men, but the behavior under more estrogenic expression or estrogenic environments seem to give it viability to this theory. And it's possible that primobolan and mastron can also increase the collagen expression through the androgen receptor. It's also possible that it doesn't. It's also hypothetically possible that primobolan or mastron would increase type 1 collagen more than type 3, leading to a profibrotic effect, or type 3 more than type 1 and downregulate type 1, potentially leading to a negative or deleterious impact to the tendon. However, when we look at tendon health outcomes, when we've done tendon biopsies of other steroid users, particularly those that have used primobolan and mastron, tendons look fine. So the idea that these compounds are deleterious to tendons when being leveraged with other compounds like either nandrolone or testosterone, they seem to be at worst neutral and at best positive. But we don't know. This is extrapolation because, we see folks not getting tendon injuries running things like primobolan and mastron for extended periods of time. I don't often see bodybuilders taking exogenous DHT because it's harsher on serum estradiol, but as more folks begin to experiment with it, that might change. And that leads me to the final thing that we're going to talk about, and that is winstrol. It's the only compound we have not covered. So I need to get a little bro science-y with you, and we're going to get into it, but just sort of follow me along for the story right now. There is evidence that anabolic steroids, which are derived from testosterone, have the ability or have markedly less androgenic activity, promote tissue growth, and enhance tissue repair. However, their mechanisms involved in anabolic activities remains unclear. In this report, we measured the effect of the anabolic steroid stanozolol, winstrol, and the collagen synthesis cultures in human adult dermal fibroblasts. Winstrol at 0.625 micrograms per milliliter had no effect on fibroblast replication, but enhanced collagen synthesis in a dose-dependent manner. Winstrol also increased twofold the mRNA levels of alpha-1 and alpha-3 pro-collagen to a similar extent, upregulating TGF-beta-1 and mRNA and the peptide levels. There was no stimulation of collagen synthesis by testosterone. We know this. The stimulatory effect of winstrol on collagen synthesis were blocked by TGF-1 beta antisense and by antibodies to TGF-beta. And the dermal fibroblast cultures derived from TGF-beta knockout mice, where they basically eliminated TGF-beta. So when they removed the TGF-beta expression gene from the mice, winstrol did nothing to collagen synthesis. But when you just give winstrol to the normal mice, collagen synthesis goes doubled. It basically is going to point to the fact that this effect happens through TGF-beta-1, which is really, really interesting. With that said, we basically know that it can be increased, or collagen synthesis can be increased as much as 200% by winstrol. That is the data in mice, and I don't know if it's been done in people. But I think the anecdotes are worth mentioning for a few reasons. Number one, even though Winstrol does not have any impact on estrogen or estrogenic expression, it does tend to cosmetically dry folks out and crush SHBG. I have found through hanging out with bodybuilders that the level of dryness that shows up in joints and tendons, even after 1 to 2 doses, is notable, which is why they limit Winstrol intake to a week or two, usually pre-contest. It is very good at acutely increasing strength, but I do see more tendon ruptures anecdotally on Winstrol than I do from other compounds anecdotally. I have seen a lot of bodybuilders discuss things like collagen dysplasia with Winstrol. I have not seen this in humans in literature. Doesn't exist. I have looked. I have spoken to people smarter than me that intuit that unlike bioidentical DHT, which increases type 1 collagen and decreases type 3, that Winstrol is the opposite. It decreases type 1 and increases type 3. But when I see this in the rats, it seems to be going at equal rates. The coaches that I trust, but I'm just parroting them, and they have more data points than I do, but I'm just letting you guys know, seems to, if that theory is correct, that plus the acute increases in strength could cause some of the reasons for higher rates of tendon ruptures with Winstrol versus other DHT derivatives. But I don't have data to definitively back it. I don't have any tendon biopsies of Winstrol to be able to conclude it. It's one of those things that the entire reason this channel exists is because I do not trust Winstrol as a compound, but the literature isn't giving me much to prove it. It's really mostly going off of anecdotes that we've seen from folks for a long, long time. Could I be wrong on this? Yes. Do I think I'm wrong about this? No. Also, Winstrol tends to be harder on the tendon or harder on the lipids than Anavar. Same thing with the liver. So you have to limit exposure. But yeah, I'm just putting out my biases there just so that we're all on the same page. I understand that the literature looks very good for tendons on Winstrol. The anecdotes do not. And I'm going to go where the data points are with humans versus just trusting the data as is in rats. Why? Well, I've seen a lot of cases where what I see in rats does not translate into humans, and I'd rather give you guys the human data than to just say, hey, this is what we see in rodents, therefore it must be true. Yeah, it's probably true in rodents. I don't think it's true in people. Anyways, with that said, we've been going for almost 25 minutes now, and I think it's worth sort of recapping. Number one, we can see positive collagen outcomes in humans with Anavar, with things like Anadrol or Superdrol. They're simply not tolerable enough for long enough to have meaningful tendon outcomes. You can handle the load of being on both of them, but if you're looking at those in terms of like meaningfully remodeling your tendons over the long term, you're not going to be able to run them long enough. For things like Masteron and Primobolan, compounds that you could potentially run for months on end, they seem to be mostly tendon neutral. And for dihydrotestosterone, I have questions. Intuitively, the increases in collagen from the androgen receptor are promising, but we need more information at elevated level or with elevated estrogenic expression or activity to really know if the increases in collagen are a potential thing for men or if it needs to be something done at low doses with increased estrogen. I suspect with a testosterone base to elevate your levels of estrogen, you could get some better collagen outcomes with DHT and maybe primobolan and mast. I suspect primo might be better, but again, I'm just going off of gut feel. I have higher hopes in data in DHT. But yeah, that's just about it. Hopefully you guys appreciated the deep dive into the collagen expression from DHT derivatives. I really enjoyed putting this together. If you guys have any questions, please drop them in the comments. If you have any studies that you want to piggyback on, I'm completely open to doing a follow-up on Winstrol in particular. But yeah, I'm Adam with Anabolic Climbing, wishing you guys good luck. Happy sending. I appreciate you guys tremendously, and I will see you in the next one. By the way, right before I go, if you guys are interested, you guys can always check out Anabolic Insights, code climbing for 10% off on labs. I have an announcement to make for a new GHK topical partner, which is super cool, and a new TRT clinic that I'm super stoked to work with. But yeah, more news, more partners, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.